Today in Holyoke, most babies are born into the welcoming hands of a midwife. This is the story of how midwifery came to Holyoke.
Before 1985, women who were on Medicaid or had no insurance went to the prenatal clinic at Providence Hospital, which was practically in West Springfield. Transportation was tough. In order to get there, they had to take a van.
And I used to come to the van to meet people in Holyoke, and they were supposed to wait outside the homes, or in a corner, so we will pick them up. And then we go down High Street and come up Maple. But that didn't work very well because in the winter they were not able to come out. It was too cold. So you can tell that we had a lot of people that didn't show for the appointment because of different reasons, and that was one of them.
Prenatal care was being delivered at Providence Hospital in the auditorium, and they had to wait then as a group to be seen, for the doctors to come in and do their visit. Women were seen in sort of cordoned off cubicles, which just had sheets between them, and so there wasn't real privacy. Nobody spoke Spanish except for one person who was a translator, and women weren't allowed to bring their children or their husbands or their boyfriends or their family members because there wasn't enough room on the bus, and the idea was that all the prenatal care for all these women had to take place in 1 or 2 mornings a week, and for the doctor to be able to see everybody quickly, there wasn't a lot of time for talking. It was just basically listening to the heartbeat, taking blood pressure, dipping the urine, and possibly sending people to do blood work.
I was the Associate Executive Director of the Holyoke Visiting Nurse Association.
I oversaw the family planning clinic services for the entire county.
And I was actually a liaison between the schools and all the community agencies, particularly those involved in health.
I think my interest as an observer of what I would call discrimination against women and women's services. The Holyoke did not have a plan for comprehensive, what I call comprehensive health care to women. I became interested in the women's movement. So I think I started to put the pieces together about the lack of just basic information and services for women.
We started the Coalition of Spanish-Speaking Human Service Providers, and soon after that the Primary Care Coalition. And through all of those efforts, we were insisting on the city paying attention to the very severe needs of the Latino community in healthcare, particularly, but also in housing, employment, education, and so forth.
So when I came to Providence, one of the first things Bill asked me to do was look into what we called at that time all these women sitting in the corridor outside the auditorium. And I was aghast, quite honestly, at the way women were being treated in terms of their care.
Fairly high up state Department of Public Health officials came to the Western Mass Health Planning Council and had a press conference explaining the statistics and asked people to get involved
And I was a member of the Coalition for Adolescent Health and Needs for Children and also the Western Mass Health Planning Council. And many of those people, we had already been talking about adolescent parenting, adolescent pregnancy, the issues around minorities, the issues around access to services. So this was just kind of a natural next step to begin to look at these issues in a more serious light.
I had no idea what was going to happen, where it was all going to end. I just knew Holyoke had a real crisis.
So the first response from Providence Hospital was to enhance services at the hospital, to increase the hours, to increase bilingual capacity. I think they added some home visits by a social worker, and so on and so forth. We found that response to be good, but not sufficient, not adequate, because we wanted those services in town. We felt that the critical failure in depriving access to the Latino community was distance, and people just didn't have the capacity, the ability to go there and seek services there. At that point, we requested assistance from DPH, and they provided us assistance through Jean Massimiano to come in and help us with developing a proposal that would make more sense and that would be acceptable.
We were more involved with where the clinic was going to be, the accessibility of the clinic, and the appropriateness of the clinic, that it was going to address the issues of the cultural and language issues of this population. And it was almost impossible to do that in a hospital setting. I can remember going in and talking all the way from Pittsfield to myself, going down, we're going to do it this way. But only because that's the only way it would work.
My first memories of the clinic, it was at 210 Elm Street in downtown Holyoke, and it was an old nursing school that was renovated to become, on the second floor, methadone maintenance. On the third floor was our OB clinic, and on the fourth floor was an inpatient detox unit.
Somewhere along the way, the idea that we should use nurse midwives came into the picture, because none of the OBs wanted to go in and be out of their offices and work in a community center. And that idea came from two people. One was a nurse midwife, Jane Fry, and the other was a wonderful, wonderful person, pediatrician David Siegelman.
My son Jesse's pediatrician, David Siegelman, was really interested in what was going on in Holyoke, and he asked me if I could get together literature that showed the effectiveness of nurse midwives, and I went and I gave them to David. David then decided to write a letter to the OB committee at Providence Hospital, and he brought up the idea of hiring nurse midwives.
So I had to basically put the capital budget together and sell this to the board that we needed to invest money, renovate, get equipment, and hire midwives, and put the clinic in the community where the clients would see it as part of their community.
Starting a new prenatal center off-site from the hospital was very exciting. I remember going there, and they had a big open house, and we just didn't know what to do. We needed furniture. We didn't have furniture. And so we went downstairs and told the director downstairs we needed furniture. Somehow we got it. The hospital delivered it. Everything looked great. Came through the open house. It was wonderful. When it was over, within 10 minutes, all the furniture disappeared and went back to the hospital. So we're thinking, okay, what's next? But it came eventually. We eventually had our own, and it was just a very, I keep using the word exciting because I think it wasn't exciting. It was beyond the times to do something like that. Tina was the first midwife who worked with Vicki and then developed the program and then started to hire the different ones.
From the start, it was a team effort. And I have to give a call out to Tina Kretzky, who was our director at the time. I think her model of leadership, perhaps coming from her Quaker ethic, was so exemplary and set the tone so that whenever we would fall into a squabble or a disagreement or a misunderstanding within ourselves or within the staff, we would be raised up by her leadership. And I think that made a huge difference, especially in the beginning.
All of us were required to speak Spanish. All of us were committed to taking care of a challenging population. Our staff included nurse midwives, included a registered dietitian, a social worker, an outreach worker from the community. We had a phone number that women could call any time of the day and night, and they could speak to one of us in English or Spanish. We met them in the hospital when they went into labor. We helped them through their labors. We helped them push their babies out into the world. Once the babies were born, we in just a few minutes had those babies in their arms and were helping them breastfeed their babies. And that was a very, very special time. It was very satisfying for those of us who were working in that service. Women were grateful from the community, and we were grateful to be able to provide that service.
When the midwives came, everything changed. Our eyes were opened as to new ways of laboring, new ways of delivery. It was wonderful. We all learned so much.
At the time I started at Providence, patients had two options. You either went natural after going to a natural childbirth class, or you had spinals. And at that time, if the patient opted for a spinal, the patient was wheeled down to the delivery room, and even if you can see the presenting part of the baby, the mother had a spinal. Once the midwives came on board, the practice changed. It was evolved into the midwife would help the patient push, and the mother was much better after that. She had no extra medication. She was able to get up within an hour or two, take a shower, and feel more comfortable.
I'll tell you, coming from England and new to this nursing situation, when I first came, it was almost 100% spinal. And if anyone had a natural delivery, they were almost looked upon as, are you crazy? That was the biggest culture shock for me.
From the old-time nurses going to mid-forceps to delivering your baby in the tub. That was an eye-opener.
Never did that. We were lucky.
Yeah, we were all very lucky and so blessed that you decided to do this in Holyoke, Massachusetts.
Yes. Yeah. We'll talk amongst ourselves on the unit many times where we're working now, and we often reflect on our experience and our time with the midwives. And speaking from myself, Marianne and Mellon, those were the best years of my life.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And we talk about it numerous times. We'll look at each other and say, that's when we felt good. That's when we made a difference. That's when we left work feeling awesome.
Exactly.
And it was wonderful.
Many good things came out of the Infant Mortality Task Force. The Care Center, which offers GEDs to pregnant and parenting teens, and an option to prepare for college, and also the school-based teen clinics at the high school.
I believe part of the reason we opened is because of the high infant mortality rate, and included in that was the highest rate of teenage pregnancy. We were notified within a couple of years that these two particular rates had dropped significantly. And so there was a big day at the clinic. It was closed for a day, and we all went to Boston, and we got an award that was presented specifically to the entire staff at the prenatal center. And that's very good. That's what we were attempting to, accomplish. And everybody worked together, and it was accomplished.
Really, right from the start, word got out about the kind of care we were providing. We began to draw people from the hill towns, from Hampshire County, from northern Connecticut. It was an exciting time. We offered care that women wanted.
We formed our own corporation in 1994 and called ourselves Midwifery Care Associates. But by 1996, it became pretty obvious that Providence Hospital was going to close. So we searched for another hospital with whom we could affiliate. We joined Bay State Medical Center in 1996 and opened our office on Appleton Street. We piloted the concept of midwives working in the triage area. And now midwifery is the standard of care, and we too. During our time at Bay State, if you lived in Holyoke and you wanted to deliver in your own community, there was no option to have a midwife. You either came to us and delivered at Bay State, or you went to the prenatal center and delivered at Mercy. One day in 2001, I got a call from Gary Ryder. He was the new medical director of Holyoke Hospital. He said that the hospital had just made an alliance with the Holyoke Health Center and that they were going to open a midwifery service in downtown Holyoke at the health center. He asked me if we'd like to be that midwifery service. So here was our chance to both see our families in downtown Holyoke and attend their deliveries in their community hospital. In October 2001, we affiliated with Holyoke Hospital, now Holyoke Medical Center, and became Midwifery Care of Holyoke.
I always wanted a full midwifery service here at Holyoke Medical Center. I felt that our patients deserved a full midwifery service. And when I learned that they were coming on board in 2001, I knew that that would change the complexion of this place forever.
And I remember my nurse manager saying to me one day, just hold on a little longer. Then there was this wonderful day when she said, guess what? We're getting the midwives. And it was really one of the best days of my life because I thought, okay, I can stay here. I can stay here as long as they're here, I can stay here. And I didn't know them. I didn't know them at all. I just had heard about them. They had an amazing reputation in Holyoke through Providence. And I knew a lot of women that had given birth at Providence. When I would say to people, why aren't you coming to Holyoke? They would say, because we didn't have midwives.
One of the things we've always prided ourselves on here in the birthing center is that we want to give our mothers as many options as possible in childbirth. And the midwives, when they came, they opened the door to that. Prior to their arrival, we purchased our tub because they were coming. They were instrumental in us getting nitrous oxide. They've been huge in our work towards trying to become baby friendly because skin to skin and rooming in and all those things were just the way that they lived, so that they increased all the choices for the mothers in our community having children here at our hospital.
So I was really lucky to come on while Tina Krutsky was still the service director, and we overlapped a couple of years before she retired. And in that time, I was able to kind of absorb the culture of this practice, this community, this hospital, the birthing center, and that was really important. The nurses that we work with are the most amazing nurses I've ever worked with and seen in action. And I think Holyoke Medical Center, as it has evolved and under new leadership and is starting to kind of itself form a new culture, has really embraced the midwifery team as part of where we're going in the future with this hospital. Most of the women who come in labor bring many generations of support people with them and friends, and I think that's beautiful, and I think that it's even more beautiful that many of those people have had a baby with us.
Tina delivered me and my son.
And Nina delivered me, and I'm gonna have another baby with the midwives.
I was born with the midwives in Holyoke, and my daughter was born with the midwives in Holyoke, and now my next will be born with the midwives in Holyoke.
¿Dónde nació?
Nací en Providence Hospital con las comadronas, y ahora tengo mis bebés con las comadronas también.
I think we were a great practice, and I think it's a great practice today as well, and I'm so pleased to have been a part of it.
My whole family has been since involved in midwifery. My wife, my children, my grandchildren, and even my nephew have all been born under the wonderful care of the midwives in Holyoke, Massachusetts.
It made it more fun to work here. So I'm glad you're here.
And now I realize how important it is to continue the culture that was really when the midwifery practice was founded by the sage midwives who began this practice. That thread has continued.
Thank you, nurses. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you.